some of the younger viewers of the show actually might not remember too much about Glenn Beck, because it's been a while now. Glenn Beck was on Fox News, had to be over a decade ago now. And so a lot of the younger viewers here are like, I don't know really anything about this guy. Well, this guy made a name for himself by being insane. And he would have these chalkboard conspiracies where he would write all these different things and connect all the dots between, look, Van Jones is in the Obama administration, and Van Jones was an avowed communist. I'm going to draw a line over here and put like Louis Farrakhan over here, and I'm going to put Reverend Wright over here who hates America, and then draw it to Obama, and then at the end of the day, oh my God, he's a communist, and he's an Islamist as well. He would say these insane things, and he was so insane, and he went so far that after a while, even Fox News was like, it was too much. It was too much, too quickly, and I think a lot of advertisers pulled at some point, and then his show was gonzo. But then he had his own network, and they were in all this financial trouble, and I think they have some sort of deal that they worked out with maybe, I think it might have been Ben Shapiro's The Daily Wire. And so, anyway, long story short, he's back to his old tricks. His old tricks are being insane and pushing conspiracy theories. Look at what he just said this week.
California, you cannot accept this ban with churches. It's not a coincidence that the left has said they wanted to destroy the wealth of the United States and destroy what? The entrepreneurial spirit. Do you remember when Barack got in and he started all of these things, and all of these local Marxists started banning lemonade stands? Well, I'll do you one better. If you watch your family lose everything because they were entrepreneurs, and you're being taught that capitalism is bad in school, do you want to be an entrepreneur? It's not a coincidence that over 50% of restaurants now are closed for good. As of today, 41% of all businesses overall closed permanently. Now, those are the small businesses. And they were the ones that were ordered closed by the government. Bars, restaurants, gyms, yoga studios. The next wave, especially in California, you're toast. There will be no more wealth to redistribute. And the Marxists and the Anarchists and the Islamists, something that I was marked by every single person in the media, left and right, I was called a madman for saying it. Everything we talked about at Fox, everything is now in play. It's all here. And what is coming, my friend, is going to be tough. Unless we all stand together. Unless we return to our God. Unless we allow this initial impact to change us fundamentally. Marxists, anarchists, Islamists working together. They're not even hiding it anymore.
Seroquel. Look into it. Seroquel, Glenn. The headline of the video, the title of the video was, "Not a coincidence. Federal debt, COVID lockdowns, BLM protests, and CARE are all connected." CARE is the Council on American and Islamic Relations. It's a big Muslim advocacy group. Let me repeat that. Not a coincidence. Federal debt, COVID lockdowns, BLM, and CARE are all connected. So he starts out by saying, we can't ban churches. Nobody's banning churches, dog. They might be shutting down in-person gatherings in enclosed areas, but they're doing that because there's a pandemic ripping through the country like wildfire. That's why they're doing it. I love how nothing could just be Occam's razor. Glenn Beck's whole job is to do the opposite of Occam's razor every time he talks. Occam's razor says the reason why they're shutting down all these things is because there's a pandemic and a lot of people are dying, and they're fearful of a lot more people dying, so they want to shut it down before you overwhelm the hospitals and exacerbate the problem even more. he gets all melodramatic. They can't ban churches. Then he says, the left said they want to destroy the wealth of the United States. Okay, I don't know what he's referring to, but I'm very confident in saying whatever he thinks he's referring to, he's strawmanning the hell out of somebody who made a more reasonable point. Nobody has ever said, I want to destroy the wealth of the United States. What are you saying? Then he goes on to cite how over 50% of restaurants are closed for good. And he lists all these businesses that are going to be hurt. Bars, restaurants, gyms, yoga studios. Yes, because of the pandemic. So if anything, you should be mad at Donald Trump and you should be mad at the leadership in this crisis because there was no leadership. We didn't get the virus under control. And now a lot more things are shutting down again. If we had just done universal masks early on, we could have avoided a lot of the shutdowns and people would have been much better off. We would have saved so many more lives. But bring that up to Glenn Beck and see what he says. So the solution would have been universal masks from early on in the pandemic. He would turn around and say, that's tyrannical. It's tyranny. Yeah. So it's tyranny to wear a mask, which is the solution. But then he turns around and complains that all these things are shutting down. But they're shutting down because we didn't control the pandemic and because people weren't wearing masks. You gotta pick one, bro. You gotta pick one. Now, notice. So, and here's the main point in this segment. He could have talked about the lack of leadership, which led to all these economic problems. And a bunch of other countries have it under control, and the unemployment rate is still really low. How? They temporarily nationalize wages. He could have called for that. That would have stopped all these problems that he's complaining about. He could blame the corrupt politicians in Washington, D.C. for making every wrong decision every step of the way. He's not doing that. What does he do? He takes COVID-19 and the economic crisis, and he redirects anger away from the oligarchs and towards Marxists, anarchists, and Islamists, who he says are coming to take your wealth and turn us away from God. By the way, it doesn't matter how religious you are. That's not going to fix any of these real world problems, by the way. I mean, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but doesn't matter if you're more religious, less religious, whatever. That's not going to impact what's happening with the economy and what's happening with the pandemic. But he looks at all these problems, the economic problems, the debt, which, by the way, the debt isn't the real problem. The real problem is the freaking depression that we're in. Instead of blaming the lack of leadership, the lack of getting the virus under control, the corrupt politicians, he blames Marxists, anarchists, and Islamists. In other words, people with zero power. There are no Marxists in the U.S. with any power. There are no anarchists in the U.S. with any power. There are no Islamists in the U.S. with any power. None. But he somehow is redirecting. See, this is the brilliant old trick where you get a lot of conservative people, instead of blaming the oligarchs and blaming the wealthy and blaming the politicians and blaming the corrupted people and institutions for their problems, Glenn Beck is redirecting all this anger towards Marxists, anarchists, and Islamists, which is just a stand-in for leftists and Muslims. So, oh my God, the economic problems, all these economic problems, blame the leftists, blame the Muslims. Scapegoating 101. Leftists and Muslims didn't have Dickie McGee's act to do with this. You know who created this situation? The politicians. Trump not calling for universal masks early on. Washington, D.C. for not passing a UBI to make sure everybody's okay through this pandemic. The lack of Medicare for all, so our politicians representing the for-profit health insurance companies instead of the people. This is where the blame goes. The blame goes on the government for passing the CARES Act and doing a reverse Robin Hood and fully implementing corporate socialism. See, he would blame just socialism. No, that's not what you should blame. You should blame corporate socialism. So that's corporatism. The government allows the wealthy and corporations to loot the treasury. It's not regular people who are getting some government money. That one-time stimulus payment wore off a long time ago. So it's just, I can't even keep up with how stupid the argument is. So you're upset about the economy shutting down. Okay, well then be upset about not getting COVID under control. That's why the economy keeps shutting down. And who do you blame for that? You got to blame Trump. You got to blame the politicians. You got to blame the lack of universal masks. You got to blame the lack of Medicare for all. How are we going to have millions of people without health insurance during the fucking pandemic? And what are you doing? You're blaming Marxists, anarchists, and Islamists. This is why we can't have nice things. Because any real objective look at the problem, any real objective look at the state of the country, would immediately find, oh, we know exactly who's to blame. It's the Republicans and the Democrats in Washington, D.C., who are constantly looking out for their corporate donors and the wealthy, far above and beyond the needs of your average American. That's who you blame for all of this. That's who you blame. But he will keep doing everything he can to take the blame away from the 1% and put it towards people with no money, no power. And he also sprinkles in a nice dash of religiosity, extreme religiosity, fundamentalism, theocracy. And in real time, he's reducing the IQ of his listeners. That's what I get from watching this clip.